and tell you a little bit about the technical details of this monument. I present to you, Mr. Ivan.
Mr. Chairman, His Excellency the President, the Honorable Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport, Mr. Anthony, and this afternoon, that task is but a simple one. I will not try to bore you with all the as you said, technical details, because it can be confusing sometimes using technical jargons that we, the artists, are accustomed to. Hence, I'm just going to give you, try to be as simple as possible. When I decided to enter the competition, actually it was the Minister of Culture who got me involved. I was visiting Guyana, and I went in to pay him a courtesy call, and he gave me the rules of the competition. Actually, I was trying to convince the minister that we can set up a foundry at the Borough School of Art. And while we were talking about it, he told me about the competition, and he gave me all the rules, and so I decided that I'm going to enter the competition. And when thinking about the competition, I first thought about what am I going to do for a monument or 1823 rebellion. Therefore, I did some research and found out that there was a rebellion in 1823, and it started in Plantation Success and spread east up to Mahaica and west as Liliendal. I realized that there were misunderstanding and with slaves, and they thought they were granted their freedom, and in actual fact, it was a circle that went out regarding the rules and how they should worship. As a matter of fact, the planters misinterpret or willfully misinterpret the circle that went out, and we were returning the freedom of the slave to worship. They were being confined, and therefore they thought that they ought to rebel against that, and they wanted a peaceful rebellion. So I studied all of this, and I decided that how am I going to incorporate rebellion, revolution, and religion together. And in thinking, I realized that the cross is probably the most recognized symbol for the Christian religion. And therefore, I thought that I should include the cross as a symbol of religion. And then chain, everyone knows that when you talk about slavery, the first thing comes to mind is chain. And so I decided to use the chain and the cross, and kind of use it like a rosary. Those of you who would have known about Catholic, they would have a string of beads and a cross at the end of it. So I decided to use it like kind of a rosary. So what I decided to do is to marry history and aesthetics together to create this monument. I decided that there was going to be three figures, one main figure standing erect with legs apart, in defiance, not aggressive, not moving towards aggression, but standing for me in an event that they needed to really put up a fight. Then the firm stance is an indication that we are standing firm and we're not going to retreat, no surrender. I also used two figures, a female figure, because in my research I found out that females were involved in the rebellion, and they played a very important part. As a matter of fact, there was one female that used to walk from Mahaica to Plantation Success every week to attend church and to be involved in the planning. So I thought I should include a female. And what I did, I on the other side, you will see there's a female figure with a woman moving forward in a very strong and aggressive manner, with a cutlass in one and a fist folded with power, saying that we are going. And there's the other figure, the male figure, with a musket. Even though the slaves had muskets, they did not use them, with a musket, showing that we are here, we are fighting. Even if it's a peaceful one, but we are fighting for our freedom. And the hand showing that it's beckoning the others to come forward. But in creating a monument, there are a lot of things that you do. For example, most cases, when a monument is to be created, the artists do a maquette. A maquette is a scale version, a small version of what is supposed to be the monument. And there are two scenarios. The maquette is either given to a foundry, where the foundry would use their artists, and the artist would create or enlarge the maquette to the required size of the monument, as in the case of the 1763 monument. Philip Moore designed the maquette of the 1763 monument, and it was built in England. In the case of there's another scenario where the artists design the monument, also do the blow-up, the enlarging of the maquette, and then a foundry is commissioned to do the casting. That was in the case of the Diamond Monument. The Diamond Monument was designed and built, that's the model, and then it was taken to Bass Aluminum Cast Iron Foundry where it was built. In the case of the 1823 monument, that was not the case. It's fortunate that I did not only study sculpture, but I also studied foundry work. So when I graduated from Boys School of Art, and then I got a scholarship to study sculpture in Cuba. When I was there, I got involved in monumental sculpture. And so I did not only study sculpture, but I studied monuments foundry work. And so I was in a fortunate position where I was not only in a position to design, but I was in a position to build. But in building a monument or building any artistic sculpture in metal, the principal procedure is basically the same that our forefathers did many, many years ago. A cavity is created, and molten metal is poured into the cavity, and when the metal solidifies, the cavity is broken off, and whatever shape or design was in the cavity, that is what comes out of the monument. So what we did in the 1823 monument, we used what we call a lost wax technique. In other words, the model was built in clay, in natural clay. And when I say natural clay, someone once asked me if it's a natural clay. When you say natural clay, we're talking about the clay that you get from the ground. There's also another clay that we use that we call synthetic clay, which is the clay that is mixed as a powder clay mixed with oil and wax. It enables you to work without having to wet it and because you can work and leave it, you don't have to cover it. But with natural clay, you would have to cover it and wet it all the time. And we had a problem where, because of the temperature here, the clay was drying rapidly. And I had some good friends like Mr. Everly Austin from the Boys School of Art. He would help me to water the clay and water the model and wet it 3 and 4 times a day. And at night when we finished, sometimes cover it and leave it airtight. During the process of modeling the clay, after working, I started work in November last year, and November 2012, 11, sorry. And then I left and went back to the States to get the raw material. And during that time, Mr. Austin had the task of wetting every day, all day and night, so that when I come back, it wouldn't be too dry. And I can tell he did a wonderful job. And Mr. Austin, I'd like to thank you at this point in time. Also, when I came back, I started to work on clay. So what I did, after the model is built, it was 9 feet in clay. It was sectionalized, where I divided it in sections and then apply what we call RTV, which we call room temperature vulcanizing rubber. And the RTV rubber is painted onto the model, sometimes 10 coats, 8, 9, 10 coats, depends on the size. And that is so that you can get whatever is on the model can be transferred into the mold. But the RTV rubber is a flexible rubber. It would not stand on its own. So having painted the model with the rubber, then I had to build a mold with plaster of Paris. We call a model mold. So this plaster of Paris mold is what the RTV mold is going to sit in. And so after that is done, the model is then demolded, where you take off all the mold and it's done in pieces because it's too big to manage. And then wax is melted and painted or poured into the mold. And when that is done, then you put it all back together. So what you see here, this was first done in clay, then from clay it was done in wax. The exact size was done in wax. But it was kind of difficult to manage the wax, I mean, especially in a climate like Guyana. The temperature is very hot and it melts, sometimes it's deformed, you have to go back and shape it again, and it was hard work. But eventually we were able to get it to what we want. Then it was cut up in pieces, manageable pieces, and cast. What happens, a liquid we call colloidal silica is placed in a tank with fused silica. Fused silica is like the white sand we have in Guyana, but it is heat and burned to a temperature where it becomes crystallized, and then it is crushed and into powder form. And it is in a colloidal silica, which acts like a binder, and the fused silica is in a tank and it must be suspended all the time. You must keep it suspended, spinning all the time. If it stopped, then because it's sand and glass, it would not dissolve. It would melt and it would settle at the bottom. And so you have to keep it suspended. And what happens many times when we work, there would be blackout. And wherever I am, I had to make an arrangement with the security at Burroughs Boulevard to tell me whenever there's blackout, whichever part of the country I am, I had to leave and come down to the school and turn off the motor and take it out of the tank. Because if it remains in the tank, when the power comes on and if the motor is on, because the silica is settled, the motor can't turn and it will burn. We have an experience one was burned like that. So many nights I stayed at Burroughs Boulevard. I sleep there sometimes, I work there sometimes, so that's to say auntie. And that guard that was working at school, she never failed. Every time there's blackout, even if it lasts 5 minutes, she would call me. And if I don't get her in time when the light comes on, she will ensure that she puts it on, would turn back the machine so it can keep them running. However, when after finishing the wax, it is dipped in this colloidal silica mixture a number of times. Each coat must be dried before you can put another coat. And when it's ready, it is thick enough and can withstand the pressure, can withstand the heat of over 2,000 degrees. It is a funnel is attached and cut off, and it's put in an oven and burnt out. And that's why we call it last wax, because all the wax is burnt out of the mold, and the hard shell remains. And then the bronze is melted and poured into that mold. After further pouring, then it is the mold of the bronze, the shell is broken off, and the pieces are well together again. And at this time, I must also commend the instructors and students from the Sapphire Center, Mr. Cox and the student from Sapphire Center, and Mr. Cadogan and the student from Kura. They were very, very helpful. And I must say, without their help, I could not have, this body would not have been a success. They helped, and I think they must be commended for that too. Now they did the welding and putting the pieces together. Now when it was welded together, that's really hard job start, because once it's welded together, my task is to weld what we call chase or get rid of all the welding seams, and I can tell you it is hard, because as you're grinding, the metal is flying in your skin, it's getting you something, and sometimes you wonder what is your real color. If you're black or green, because the green bronze tend together a greenish thing. And when the bronze and the perspiration, because the place is very hot, all over my body is green. I remember when we were doing the Damon Monument, I had a similar case when I go home, and when my children saw me, they were scared because I was green all over. Fortunately for me, they're not here this time, so they couldn't see me. But that's the part, apart from the fact that it's the greenness of the bronze and the copper is also a kind of dangerous too. So I had to be working the respirator. It was a little uncomfortable to be called working the respirator. You're perspiring, you're covering yourself, trying to protect yourself from all the metal filings, and then the heat. It was very uncomfortable. But we were able to finish it. And in July, the end of July last year, this monument was completed. However, we had to wait until the base was finished so that we can attach the fixtures so that they put it to the monument. The task was a good one. I enjoyed it. I like doing art, and I enjoy doing what I did. And one thing I can say from this monument, we are in a position where we might call it a legacy or a collateral benefit. But Burroughs Boulevard now has an art foundry. And that foundry at Burroughs Boulevard, we are capable of casting any monument of any size. And that is a technology, even though we did the Damon Monument in Guyana, and I missed to say that when we were pouring the metal, there was one worker from Bass Aluminum Cast Iron Foundry, Mr. Brent Talbone. And I would be mad if I didn't remember to mention that Brent Talbone was the person who was with me, because most of the pouring we did at night, when all the students were away from the school because of the heat and the noise from the school next door, they were complaining. So at nights and weekends when no one is there, Brenton and I would be at the school working, melting the bronze and pouring it into the mold. And so when we were doing the other monuments at Brass Aluminum Cast Iron Foundry, they had a team of workers. But at Burroughs Boulevard, we had no specialized team, nobody. So there are some people who came in and asked, is there anything I can do? And those staff and students of Burroughs Boulevard, I'm grateful for the help they give. I'm saying that now there's a foundry at Burroughs Boulevard. And I think that we should capitalize on that and use up it as much as we can, because we are able to say that we are in a position to cast anything. As a matter of fact, it is the only art school in the entire English-speaking Caribbean that has an art foundry. And we are ahead of the game. And we must keep ahead of the game. And even though I'm not here to give a vote of thanks, there are some people who helped me in the quiet ways. Some people gave me encouragement. My sisters, my family who are not here in the United States, and they will call. As a matter of fact, I can say that I spent about 8 months here last year working on the monument. And every day, my wife would call and we would talk. She would give me the support. Even though she was not here, she would give me the support. And I'm happy that they understand, and my children, they came last year to see what I was doing, and even to last day they were calling me and trying to encourage me to go on. So even though they were not here with me in person, they were here in spirit. And so all those people who gave me support in the quiet moments or encouragement, wherever, I would like to say thanks, and without your help and without your support, this project would not have been a success. I hope I have not bored you enough, and thank you.
Come on, he's a son of the soil. He built it in Guyana. Give him a round of applause.
A history, if left forgotten, will rob us of a significant part of the legacy of struggle that our ancestors left us. As you know, the European-inspired transatlantic slave trade ushered in one of the darkest epochs in humanity, regarded as the largest forced migration and the greatest maritime tragedy in human history. It also ushered in the horrendous system of plantation slavery, with its stark exploitation, its brutal physical and psychological repression. And it is against this horror that the enslaved ancestors rebelled. We know that 250 years ago, that Kofi led the Berbice slave uprising against the Dutch. But very few, however, remember that 60 years after that, on the 17th of August 1823, that there was one of the largest slave rebellions in the history of the Western Hemisphere in Demerara. Some historians have estimated that nearly 12,000 enslaved persons rebelled against the colonial masters. The rebellion, though short-lived, helped to accelerate the abolition of slavery, which came on the 1st of August, 1838. In 2011, to mark the UN-designated Year of International Year of People of African Descent, the government of Guyana undertook a number of activities. Among them was the construction of the 1823 monument, and in April of 2011, a national competition was launched for the design of the monument. We received 5 designs, and these were from Ivor Tom, as you just heard him, Mr. Michael Khan, and I think he's in the audience at the back, Mr. Christopher Sundar, Mr. Van Sertima, and Mr. Eric Phillips. And these designs were evaluated by a technical panel which adjudged Mr. Tom's design as the winning one. And of course, as they say, the rest is history, because Mr. Tom was contracted by us to sculpt this monument. Traditionally, our capacity to do bronze sculpture has been very limited in Guyana. But we are very pleased that with this project, as Ivor just outlined, we now have the capacity at the Burroughs School of Art to do many more such monuments. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to use it to do other public projects. We also established a site selection committee under the chairmanship of Colonel Lyndon Ross, who is the chairman of today's proceedings. And we advertised several times in the newspaper to cite this monument. However, on all such occasions, nobody responded to our request. The committee then decided, based on the history of this uprising, that we'll identify a number of villages on the East Coast. And in fact, there were 10 villages that were identified on the East Coast because of various things in the history of this uprising. And we were looking for a suitable spot. We also identified 5 places in Georgetown. On the East Coast, we look at Bachelor's Adventure, we look at Chatamargo, Le Souvenir, Elizabeth Hall, Melanie, Coven John, Nabaklis, Dutch Fort, Beehive, and Good Hope. And in Georgetown, we looked at the parade ground, the court of law, the compound of the courts of law, the national park, and this site. The committee, after reviewing all the various sites, decided that the present place where we are at today is the best one and recommended this to the ministry, and therefore we endorsed that recommendation, hired the necessary contractors to do the work down here. Unfortunately, when work started at the current site and was very far in advance, we then received requests from some individuals that we should change the site. However, we were not able to accommodate that belated request, and we regret the controversies that erupted around the siting. Nevertheless, I think it's time that we focus on the purpose for which the monument was built, and that is to remember the resilience and resistance of the ancestors in the 1823 uprising. And as you're aware, there were more than 30 plantations that were involved in this uprising. And we'll be working with the historians to identify many of these plantations where battle took place. And it's our intention to create what we might call a history trail on the East Coast and in Georgetown, so that we can put up markers and people can go and visit these sites and have a better perspective, a better understanding and appreciation of the scope and magnitude of the 1823 uprising. With this monument, we honor the 12,000 persons who rebelled against British colonialism, and in particular, the more than 200 enslaved persons who were killed during the uprising. We also honor the memory of those persons who were arbitrarily rounded up and executed on the various plantations. And while we don't have all the names, we do have some of the names, and we'll endeavor to make that list complete. We also, with this monument, we honor the memory of the more than 200 persons who were arrested, the 72 who were tried between August 1823 and January 1824, and of those, 51 were condemned to death, and eventually 33 were executed. And we honor their memories as well. And it is to their memories, to their courage and heroism, that this monument was built. And it now stands as a testimony of resistance against slavery and colonialism. And I want to express my thanks to all the persons who would have worked on this project, especially Ivor Thom for his dedication and commitment to sculpting this work of art, to Dr. Rose, the Director of Culture and a well-known historian in our society, to Colonel Lyndon Ross for the hard work that he has done for moving the process forward, and to our hard-working Permanent Secretary for his unstinting administrative support on this project. After today's ceremony, this monument will be handed over to to the National Trust of Guyana, and we hope that the public will work with the National Trust to protect and care this historic site. Let us all do our part to keep our history alive.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. At this time, we'll have a baton display, but this baton display will be done also with a medley of folk songs done by Mr. Price. So at this point in time, I call on the BV Dance Company and their baton group.
Their descendants. In August of 1823, 190 years ago, Kwamina, Paris, Hamilton, Rich, Achilles, and many others rose up and struck a mighty blow against the iniquitous system of plantation slavery. Historians remind us that in 1823, the War of 1823 is a historic significance because it was the largest revolt in Guyana's history, involving more than 10,000 Africans, enslaved Africans. If 1763 put a doubt in the minds of the colonializers that slaves were willing to end slavery, 1823 put the question beyond doubt. History suggests that this hastened the decision for emancipation. That this particular act of self-liberation intensified and aggravated the anti-slavery pressures in England. That following so closely on the heels of the Barbados Revolt in 1816, it created an irreversible tide in the affairs of the anti-slavery struggles of that time. That the 1823 incident influenced in a profound way the 1831 Jamaican encounter. In summary, as Eric Williams once captured and interpreted the attitude and determination of the enslaved as sending a clear message to the white master class. The white overlords accepted the message and responded accordingly. In the circumstances, the 1823 uprising, given its numerical scale, its economic effects and impact, and the social consequences, must be credited with influencing the decision to end slavery in all of the British colonies. Today, 190 years later, we have to continue struggling and to make this position totally and absolutely irreversible. We still do have many things to struggle against. We are a poor developing country. We operate in an international environment that is generally not in the favor of poor developing countries. There are still many, sometimes invisible chains that still try to keep us exploited. And this is where we must use the experiences of our ancestors to work with others in similar circumstances to try to improve conditions for the development of and end the inequality that exists so much in the world. Only, I've just seen some figures from the ILO, which suggests from 2008 to 2011 or so, some 27 million people lost their jobs because of financial and economic crises in different parts of the world. And that tremendous disparity in wealth, we have to continue to struggle to understand that this world is one, and all of us need to share in its resources. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2010, Guyana began its preparation for the celebration of the International Year of the People of African Descent. I'm advised that at that very first meeting of the planning committee, one of our elders, Sister Christabel Hughes, suggested that one of the most noteworthy acts of this government in recognition to the Year of the People of African Descent here in Guyana would be to construct a monument celebrating the historic deeds of the 1823 East Coast martyrs. I am told that the committee immediately supported the suggestion, and it was included in the menu of activities recommended to the government. The merit of this particular recommendation could not be challenged, and so we endorsed it. A monument, we are told, is a structure explicitly created to commemorate an important event as a part of the remembrance of historic times. Interestingly, the word monument comes from the Latin word meaning to remind or to warn. I take it that this definition was not lost on those who planned this monument here, for I am advised that the memorial plaque begins, "Lest we forget." It then goes on to read, "This 1823 memorial is dedicated to the memory of the millions who courageously and unceasingly waged the war for liberation against the enslavement of Africans in the New World, and especially to the hundreds who, in pursuit of their inalienable right to be free human beings, were slaughtered by the agents of an unthinking colonial administration. Gone, but not forgotten, their struggles made our world possible. All Guyanese salute their valor." Beautiful words. This monument is a potent reminder to all of us. We will not forget their struggles, nor should we forget the sacrifice and struggles of all the peoples who made up Guyana, because even before the African slave arrived here, many of the native people were slaughtered almost to extinction in the Caribbean. In many of the Caribbean islands, they have been extinct. Their struggles will not have been in vain. There will be no turning back. We will, as a people and as a nation, collectively and individually, work to further the gains of the heroic dead. Their struggles made our world possible. Our struggles must make a better world for the generations to come. We owe this to ourselves and to those who will walk this land after we are gone. To do otherwise is to court the displeasure of history In unveiling this monument, we are formalizing the honor that we have kept in our hearts, and as a united people, acknowledging an epic contribution of our people's quest for justice, dignity, and liberty. May this monument inspire all Guyanese to join hands in partnership for peace, progress, and prosperity. Thank you very much.